There's no two ways about it. What we did today, a lot of you aren't going to like it. Just want to warn you, it's jarring and unexpected, and, well, let's just get into it. Okay, if you're still with us, clearly your curiosity is present and maybe you want to know what we did and also why we did it. We have hours and hours and hours of creating really lovely drum sounds on here, and we've also done a lot of experimentation along the way. Today, we are doing a sort of experimentation that we have never dove into on this show before. Rather than experimenting with the drums as they are, we are using pretty run-of-the-mill drum sounds and diving into what happens after we make those sounds, specifically with affecting them and turning them into electronic sounds. If you're still with us, thank you for staying. Let's talk about exactly what's going on here. We are using bit crushing in the computer after the fact and generating 8-bit sounds. For anybody who's old enough to remember 8-bit video games, some of these sounds might be familiar, and if you have emulators of an old Nintendo, maybe you're hearing them right now. Before we go any further, let's hear each drum individually with this effect applied so you can hear exactly what's happening one at a time. The collective result here is we've reduced the quality of the sound down to what you could expect out of an old video game, which is actually really popular and something that people are doing a lot now, both compositionally with complete compositions and also to drum sounds because, frankly, it's nostalgic. The sum total of the results here is that we're taking a fully analog environment and trying to turn it into a digital soundscape in the most extreme way that we can, while also retaining musicality and retaining the feel and the vibe of what the playing originally was on the drums themselves. You can do this with electronic drums if you can afford those or maybe have them already. You can also program this kind of thing into a drum machine or maybe inside of a computer. However, there is something that gets lost when you don't have real drums to start with, and a lot of our favorite electronic music features affected real drums. We've also experimented a little bit in the past with doing this with guitar pedals and stomp boxes and things like that. That can be tricky when, at this point, if you're able to record your drums into your computer, chances are whatever software you're using is going to feature some plugins that will allow you to dramatically mess with that sound beyond just normal compression and EQ that might make it sound pretty and punchy. The big elephant in the room with this level of affecting of drum sounds is that what you play, how it's orchestrated, and also how dense or how wide open it is going to affect what you end up with after you put those different sorts of crushers and distortions and things on the drums. Let's listen to an example of a beat that was a little too dense. If we take this apart, the offending part of this is the cymbal because it's creating so much collective just noise through the whole thing. But if we mute the mics that are receiving that cymbal and just listen to the rest of them, it actually still works. If you're finding yourself in a stuck creative place these days, this kind of extreme experimentation can foment a lot of creativity. It can also lead you to a less extreme version along the way that maybe makes more sense for what you're into, but as long as you're willing to go as far as you can, every little bit along the way is going to be exciting and bring you new inspiration. We made sure to record beats today that had a lot of space and featured the toms, and also some that were more run-of-the-mill backbeat oriented, but particularly with space in some and more density in others, so that you can hear how that lands in the software when we start to affect them. Another specific and very intentional choice that we made today was to tune the drums, particularly the toms, down in the lower register, and also to leave everything wide open, because those overtones that maybe would feel like too much in the acoustic sound in the room are actually the best friend of these sorts of post-production effects. The harmonic content in the drums is a big part of what is hitting those effects and causing them to freak out and make those other overtones you're hearing and really drive home exactly what's getting affected. When the overtones of these very wide open and boomy sounding drums hit these effects, we can actually get melodies that you wouldn't otherwise hear as being present in the drums when they're played acoustically. There are some moments in things that we were playing today where the bass drum actually sounds like the highest pitched instrument for a moment, because part of its sound hit the effect and made that part of its harmonic structure jump out. This can turn your kit into a completely different melodic instrument, and doubly so if you're in the position of experimenting and seeing what happens when you affect it before your proper recording happens. There's a version of things where you can set your drums up optimally for this kind of thing when you know you're going to be going into an affected sound in the end. And once you start to pile other instruments on top of it, basses and synths or whatever else you may want to use in the future, that will further sculpt the sound of the drum set and really make it sit. It's really worth noting that what you're hearing today is the absolute tip of the iceberg of what is possible when you go down this path of affecting acoustic drums. We actually didn't change any settings for any of the examples today, other than the one where we pulled the cymbal out to demonstrate how it was affecting the groove. This means for you that you don't even need to use this particular effect. Anything you can get your hands on, anything that might be in your software, can be taken to extremes, and it's worth exploring that because there's music in there that you can't imagine unless you check it out. As we will probably hear from the purists on this, we want to take a moment to say that some people think that this is not a thing that's worthwhile to do with drums. It's a silly idea. It doesn't sound like drums at all. Why are you doing this on a drum channel? Never forget that anything that can inspire you is worth exploring. And anybody that wants to be a naysayer and tell you that it's a waste of time or that the thing you're doing sounds terrible, that really just means that they're uncomfortable with it. And if you like it, run with it.